Hello, historians. Welcome back. We have a really short section to read today. It's part 2, talking about the New England colonies. Please grab your book and open to page 104. We have 2 pages to read together. Do this now. When we read last time, we talked about the Puritans and the New England colonies. We talked about those colonies that were in the Massachusetts Bay Area, and then what life was like for people that were living in those colonies. Very strict and not very open to those that maybe saw things or viewed things differently. Today we are going to be reading about Native American conflicts. I do want you to keep in mind that we are still working on summarizing, and we are looking for people in history who really were significant in this time period. So keep in mind that we're going to be summarizing what very key people, very important key people did related to Native Americans and conflicts that happened. Here we go. The Wampanoag and Pequot were 2 of the Native American groups living in the New England areas. At first, the Wampanoag helped English colonists, and the 2 groups were peaceful neighbors. However, later colonists ignored the rights of Native Americans. As colonists settled across New England, groups such as the powerful Pequot did not want colonists to take their land. The Pequot War. In 1637, war finally broke out. In a surprise attack, settlers surrounded a Pequot village in Mystic, Connecticut, and set fire to it. Hundreds of Pequot men, women, and children were killed as they ran from their homes. Many more were captured. Those who were captured were sold into slavery. Slavery is the practice of treating people as property and forcing them to work. By 1638, once powerful Pequot had lost hundreds of their people. The defeated Pequot gave away the rights to their land and went to live with other nearby Native American groups. After that, English settlers moved into areas of present-day New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. Just reflecting a little bit about this, when we talk about treatment of people in our country, remember, Indigenous people were here well before the colonists came. They were here first, and yet we came in and took over and did not treat them in a very just or kind way. And if we fast forward to present day, there are still very hard feelings and a lot of scars for people that are descendants of Indigenous people, with good reason. King Philip's War. King Philip is going to be an important person that we want to take note of. King Philip's War. Massasoit was the Wampanoag leader who helped the Pilgrims. He died in 1661. For 40 years, he had kept peace with the colonists. This would soon change. English colonists continued to arrive during the 1600s. The new colonists seized land that had belonged to the Wampanoag for centuries. So again, colonists who are coming are taking the land from the indigenous people. The new leader of the Wampanoag was Massasoit's son, Metacomet. Pay attention to Metacomet. His name is going to be translated or switched into English. They called him Philip. So Metacomet and Philip are going to be the same. They are the same person. Metacomet became known as King Philip to the colonists. He is an indigenous man from the Wampanoag tribe. Metacomet, or King Philip, wanted to stop the English from taking more land. He sent messengers to the enemies, his enemies, the Narrasangetts, asking for their help against the settlers. Narrasangetts refused, but other Native American groups across New England joined Metacomet. So they're planning like a revolt against the colonists. King Philip's War began in 1675 and lasted for more than a year. It was one of the bloodiest wars ever fought in North America. Metacomet's fighters attacked 52 towns and killed more than 600 colonists. And again, they're fighting for land. And truly the land was their land to begin with. Entire towns were burned. Crops were destroyed. The colonists fought in the style of the Native Americans. They hid in the forest and launched surprise attacks. They burned the villages of the Native Americans. Finally, in August 1676, Native American scouts helped colonists trap Metacomet in a swamp in Rhode Island. The Wampanoag leader was then killed by Native Americans that were helping the English colonists. So some Native Americans turned against Metacomet and ended up capturing him, working with the English. With King Philip's death, the war ended. About 4,000 Native Americans had been killed, and many more, including Metacomet's wife and son, had been sold into slavery. Native American power in New England never recovered. So keep in mind, you are going to be doing some work in Seesaw right now related to Native American conflicts that were happening in the New England colonies. Thanks for listening.